Good afternoon. My name is Parker Enlow, and the topic that I've chosen for my research is the effects of the Christian church. So, the Christian church itself is the religion based on the persons and teaching of Jesus of Nazareth, or its beliefs and practices. How this church is separated out is through what's called denominations, which is just a recognized autonomous branch of the Christian church. The way these branches differ is by their interpretations of the Bible, and a lot of people say that the different denominations have different influences on their believers. And this is what I wanted to really look over in my presentation. So, previous research I've looked at is 33% of the world is Christian, and that's according to the American Heritage Foundation, and the National Library of Medicine says that religion itself has a positive, is known to increase your subjective well-being. And Pew Research Center, which is where I got this graph from, says that religion itself does more harm than good according to 55% of people. And this is just a spread of the different denominations. So in the different denominations, there are many, far too many for me to go over in this presentation. The main three I wanted to look over was Catholic, Methodist, and Baptist. However, I did, in the end of my presentation, go over some more denominations, but these are the main three that I focused on to really hone down my research. So my gap. The different denominations have different influences and effects on their believers, as I just discussed. And I wanted to see, and there's a lot of research on the different denominations. So how Methodists interpret the Bible, how Baptists do, how Catholics do, and how these interpretations of the Bible influence their believers. However, there's not a lot of research that goes into the comparison of these effects, such as how Methodists and Baptists believe this the same, how Catholics and Baptists interpret the Bible this way. And so this is what I really wanted to go into, which led me to this topic, is my church and the influence on my life. So I've grown up in the church, and religion has been something that's been really great for me. I've noticed that people around me that go to different denominations sometimes have different beliefs and different interpretations of their views of the church. And so I wanted to see, based on my life, and I wanted to see how this experience that I've had correlates with other people. And so this leads me to my research question, which is how do the different denominations of Christianity affect and influence their believers differently? So my research method was a survey. Mainly what I looked for, as I stated, is how they affect and influence their believers differently. So what I did is I got a whole bunch of people from different churches and asked them just a certain set of questions, and just revolving the influences and effects their churches have. And I tried to get an even number from each church. However, that didn't really work out in my favor because I wasn't able to. And then the structure of my research, the main thing I went for is the age, denomination, and denominational questions. So I went through age, and that was the first question to see how I could separate my research based on age to see how or if the different age groups would have responded to the questions differently. The second was denominations. So the denominations that I said is basically I wanted to see that so I could separate them into the different denominations to know, just to make it easier for myself, so I could separate them based off like the third or fourth question in my survey, and then separate them from there and look at how they responded, if that correlated with the other churches or if that didn't correlate. And then denominational questions. The other denominational questions I asked is such as, has your church had a positive influence on your life? If you've changed churches, if you changed due to reasons that were your own, like personal reasons such as moving, or if you changed due to denominational beliefs and beliefs in the doctrine that you had that you believed another church would do better at teaching you. And if they were confident their church would be there for them in a time of need. Another question that I asked was how many opportunities they had for their church to help out in the community they have, and also to help out in areas outside the community through mission trips. So this is my age range. My age ranged from 15 to 85. And this really helped me by allowing me to see just how vast the age was. And I have 6 different subsections here. The first one ranged from 10 to 23, the next one from 23 to 26, or 36, the next one from 36 to 49, the next one from 49 to 62, and what I had the most in was 62 to 75. My mean age was 47, and that's right in the middle of life. And so that really helps me to determine to know that I had a good set and a good variety of ages of people. And it really helped me narrow down the fact that I had good age groups in my survey. So, affiliation. This is the affiliation in a pie chart. So, the Baptist church is heavily dominant in my survey. The Methodist comes second, and the non-denominational is third. And then Catholics at eight right there. And then we have Presbyterian, Nazarene, and the Church of Latter-day Saints. So, Baptist. This is kind of what I was going over earlier, is that how many had changed into the church, if they had areas to help their community, how confident they were on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being not very confident their church would be there for them, 4 would be they're very confident their church would be there for them in a time of need. And basically what I did for that is for each response, I got every single one and averaged them up. And then the community over doctrine is that if they felt welcomed enough by the local community, however they didn't necessarily agree with everything the doctrine said, if they would choose to join that church. The last one is negatively affected and positive influence. So as you can see, Baptist, 59% of them have changed into being Baptist. 96% of them said they had a positive influence. They had 100% said there were areas to help their community. 25% said they had been negatively affected. And there was a 3.9 confidence in the church. And 31% of them said they would join a church if they believed in the community over the doctrine. And this is kind of how I separated it into the role of the church. I asked this to see what they believed in their own church was their church's duty to the congregation. So I separated it into support, education and discipleship, accountability, worship opportunities, service, and they could select that they thought all of them are the main role. And so as you can see, this church is really all around, they believe, that every single one. The only one that's really lacking here is accountability, but the rest are pretty even. So the non-denominational church, 100% of them had changed into the non-denominational church. 92% of them said they had a positive influence. 23% said they had been negatively affected. 100% said that they had areas to help the community. And 3.69 on a scale of 4 is their confidence in their church. And 15% of them said they would join the church if they felt welcomed by the community, but didn't so much believe in the doctrine of the church. And this is their chart. So as you can see, support and education and discipleship is the main thing that the non-denominational church believes is the main role. So the Methodist church, 77% of my surveyors had changed into the Methodist church. 100% of them had areas in the community and outside the community to help. The confidence their church would be there for them is a 3.88, and 100% of them said the church had a positive influence on their life. 50% of them said they had been negatively affected, and 16% of them said that they would choose that church if they liked the community but didn't believe in the doctrine. And this is the role of the church in the Methodist eyes. So education and discipleship has the most here, followed by worship opportunities and all of them. So the Catholic, 14% of them had changed into the Catholic Church. 85% of them said they had areas to help in and outside of their community. Their confidence in the church was a 3.16, and 71% of them said the church had a positive influence on their life. 16% of them said they'd been negatively affected by their church, and 33% of them said they would go to that church if they thought the community was good. And so in the Catholics, they really just thought that every single one of these things, support, education, discipleship, accountability, worship opportunities, and service, they thought that all of them was the role of the church, and the church should be influential in all of these ways. So next is the Nazarene church. 50% of them had changed into the church. 100% said they had areas to help in and outside of the community, and the confidence in their church is a 4. 50% of them said they had been negatively affected in their church, and 50% of them said they believed in the community over the church over the doctrine. And this is what they believe, is that all of them and support. This Presbyterian church, 100% of the Presbyterian church said that they had changed into it. 100% of them said the community service was something they offered in their church. There was a 4 on the confidence rating, and 0% of them had been negatively affected, and 0% said community over doctrine. And the role of the church is education and discipleship. And this is the Church of Christ. 100% of them had changed into the church. 100% said they had a positive influence, 0% had been negatively affected, 100% said that they had areas to help the community and outside the community. They had a confidence rating of 4, and they also had 0% say community over doctrine in this church. They said service, education, discipleships, and support were the main 3 areas that they felt were the role of their church. This is Latter-day Saint. 0% of them had changed into the church, meaning they had been raised there. 100% of them said there was areas to help them in the community. 100% said that the church had a positive influence on their life. They had a confidence in their church of 4. They had 0% have been negatively affected, and then 0% said they would believe in community over doctrine. This is what they said, which is support, worship opportunities, accountability, and that's it. And these are kind of some reasons that I wanted to highlight that people have changed, because that was a big part of my research, was if they had changed and how they had changed. And I felt this would really help me, because this would really give me eyes on how the denominations were different from people that had been to a different church and then went to that church knowing what they knew from their other one. So the first one is, as I got older, I started questioning things and never got a straightforward answer, which is really just that they would try to go to the officials at their church and they would say, hey, what does this mean? And they would always just kind of bounce around the answer. The second was the Presbyterian church and found the biblical teaching to be much more consistent and rigorous than anything I had learned in the Methodist church. So this is just saying the Presbyterian church is a much more rigid and a much more structured church than the Methodist is. And this one says that they grew up in the Assembly of God and was truly tired of only hell and damnation services. This just says that they wanted more services, meaning that, let's say they grew up Assembly of God and they went to a church like the Baptist or Methodist church. This just means that they felt that they had a better variety of services that really preached to all aspects of life. So the difference in denominations is highlighted by these 2 quotes, and this is more of my qualitative data. The one I went for earlier was my quantitative. And so this one says a more liberal church with traditional services was more welcoming and tended to attract some families. But a large amount of people my grandparents' age, a more conservative church with a less traditional service was more welcoming. And this is why I wanted to get the age range, because I figured this would be a difference. So the younger people like a more upbeat church, like a more contemporary band, like a more contemporary sermon. And older people would be more to traditional, probably something they grew up with, a more traditional band, probably a choir, and people like that was surrounding them in their church. And the second quote here is, Methodist was a very traditionalist-centered. Baptist was very focused on Helen evangelism. Non-denominational churches, in my experience, can be similar to both Methodist and Baptist churches, but a more toned-down version. Non-denominational churches have seemed more widely accepting in many ways, as a result are more diverse. And so this shows that the non-denominational church as a whole is less structured and less strict than denominations such as Baptist and Methodist. This just shows that the Methodist church and the Baptist church follow more along with the Bible, and the non-denominational churches, they still follow along with it, but it's more toned down and less serious, less rigid sermons. So my results concluded. The highest I had for each subject was a positive influence was Latter-day Saint, community service was Latter-day Saint, confidence was Latter-day Saint, change was Church of Christ, negatively affected was Methodist, community over doctrine was Nazarene. The lowest I had in change was Latter-day Saint, negatively affected is the Church of Christ, positive influence is Catholic, community over doctrine is Church of Christ, community service was Catholic, and confidence was Catholic. So the conclusion is, from my research, I feel that aside from the sermons themselves, the questions that I asked, a lot of the denominations had similar answers and similar effects that I saw on their people. Some limitations I had was I didn't have enough responses in total to have a completely valid survey. And then I also didn't have enough denominations, as you probably saw with Latter-day Saint and Church of Christ. And the smaller denominations that I listed is that I didn't necessarily have enough to make them compete with the Methodists, the Baptists, and the Catholics. And so therefore the data looked skewed. And another thing was that there's a current split going on in the United Methodist Church. And that heavily skewed the amount of people that said they've been negatively affected.
How did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your research process?
So whenever I was designing my research method and I want to do a survey, but originally I had it much less focused on how the effects differ. And so once I started changing that, it helped me realize that that's what I really need to focus on, is how the different denominations differ from each other and how they're the same.
How did the limitations of your method or data influence your new understanding?
It influenced my new understanding. It really skewed my data, as I said, with the Latter-day Saint Church and the Church of Christ. As opposed to something like Baptist, it allowed me to get a church like Baptist, it allowed me to get a more diverse opportunity and a more diverse data group. And so the limitations really affected me by not allowing me to get a new data group, and that inhibited my knowledge of that church.
What was the most important research skill you developed as a result of this process, and how might you apply it to your future endeavors?
The most important research skill that I found was knowing how to manage the time that I had to get stuff out there. So I had my survey and I knew I had to get it out there by a certain date. I knew I had to spend a certain amount of time looking over it and checking that it was right. And I knew I had a certain amount of time to get all my responses in to have enough time to formulate my presentation. And so that really helped me just stay focused, and that's going to help me in the future by just having good time management.
Very good.